Hello, we're live. We're here with Pride and Prejudice, chapter 45, page 249, for those of y'all that are following along in the book with me. It is another beautiful Louisiana Friday morning. This is my Friday that's off. I think in 2021, I won't have an off Friday anymore. That's okay. We'll find a time to read. But I love my Fridays off with y'all. Siddharth, congratulations. You made it through your semester. You got a lot of things behind you now. Just waiting to hear how you did on your score. Hey, Fareed, we were just chatting in Discord. I was talking to some friends about how much this Discord channel, not just Discord, but how much this channel means to me. Actually, I was talking to my therapist. I very want to talk about the fact that I do therapy because there's such a stigma to mental health. And off and on throughout my life, I've gone to mental health care professionals, therapists of different types to work through different issues, talk about anxieties, talk about insecurities. And it is normal if I had a blood sugar problem in my body and I had diabetes, which I do, then I would go to a professional that would help me with that. So if I have an imbalance, then, we need to talk to a professional about that. So I was talking to my therapist this morning about this channel and what it means to me. And one of the things that's so important to me about growing the numbers, Fareed told me over in Discord that we're almost at 11,000 subscribers. And what's important to me about it growing isn't monetization. I feel like as a teacher, the more readers we can get out into the world, the more thinkers we can get out into the world. And a world full of creative problem solvers and thinkers and people with open minds who've been exposed to other cultures and characters will make a better world. So for me, this is a really important mission that we get subscribers, we get readers, we get people out there to do the work of learning, to do the work of growing, of expanding their minds. My therapist and I were talking about that I was a big reader as a child. And although I had some issues in my childhood that could have some traumatic incidents that happen sometimes in childhood, that because of that reading, it helped me reach out for other options to not be defined by the things that had happened in my childhood. And I think reading, I've said that so often, reading is like a dressing room where we try on different characters to say, is this the kind of person I want to be? Is this how I want to respond to that situation? Is that what I think about love and marriage and relationships, which is what the theme of Pride and Prejudice is? Or then when you look at things like Lord of the Flies, is this what I want to be when I have my own autonomy, when I'm a young adolescent child? Do I want to just be selfish and I forgot the characters' names. I always forget character names. I always forget people's names. I don't know what that means exactly. But, there was one group that was compassionate and there was one group that was just out for themselves. Who do I want to be when I have my own autonomy? So those things are what make reading so important to me. Siddharth, back to your comments. Hello, CJ. I enjoyed your chicken and waffle. Well, I didn't enjoy them. I enjoyed looking at them. Siddharth, it comes out Friday. I knew it did. I thought it was supposed to. I'm hoping to do the teleparty thing over the holidays. Maybe I was even thinking New Year's Eve night or New Year's Day. I know y'all have things with family. I might as well, but just some way to celebrate over the holidays. That would be a fun way to do Pride and Prejudice. I'm really looking forward to Pride and Prejudice instead of a Christmas movie. Should go because we all need therapists sometimes. Fareed, we all can benefit from talking to a professional who helps us process the information in an appropriate way. Doesn't mean we're out there being serial killers. It doesn't mean we're weak. It doesn't mean we don't believe in our faith. It just means there are chemicals. We are a mix of chemicals, and those sometimes are balanced and sometimes they're out of balance. CJ, I think I fell asleep right after we stopped talking. Pride and Prejudice is the show. Piggy I knew, but the bad guy, Ralph was the bad guy. I don't think Ralph was the bad guy. Siddharth. He was the leader of the group of boys that was so bad. And Pride and Prejudice, the movie, I'm really looking forward to watching it. All right, so I'm 5 minutes in. I haven't read. I apologize. Let's read. Convinced as Elizabeth now was that Miss Bingley's dislike of her had originated in jealousy, she could not help feeling how very unwelcome her appearance at Pemberley must be to her, and was curious to know with how much civility on that lady's side the acquaintance would now be renewed. On reaching the house, they were shown through the hall into the saloon, which is salon, like the formal Jack. It's Jack. Thank you for all the names. Whose northern aspect rendered it delightful for summer. Its windows opening to the ground admitted a most refreshing view of the high woody hills behind the house and of the beautiful oaks and Spanish chestnuts which were scattered over their intermediate lawn. In this room they were received by Miss Darcy, who was sitting there with Mrs. Hurst and Miss Bingley, and the lady with whom she lived in London. Georgiana's reception of them was very civil, but attended with all that embarrassment which, though proceeding from shyness and the fear of doing wrong, would easily give to those who felt themselves inferior the belief of her being proud and reserved. Mrs. Gardiner and her niece, however, did her justice and pitied her. By Mrs. Hurst and Miss Bingley they were noticed only by a curtsy, and on their being seated, a pause, awkward as such pauses must always be, succeeded for a few minutes. It was first broken by Miss Ainsley, a genteel, agreeable-looking woman, whose endeavor to introduce some kind of discourse proved her to be some more truly well-bred than either of the others, and between her and Mrs. Gardiner, with occasional help from Elizabeth, the conversation was carried on. I learned something yesterday. Interesting. I learned how to see who's watching. I didn't know that before. That was, CJ, did you teach me that? One of the viewers yesterday taught me that. And my daughter sneaks in sometimes and watches, and I don't know she's there. So I like to check to see, because she's a bit of a stalker. She doesn't say, hey, Mom, I'm on. She just watches and tells me later, oh, blah, 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 some comment from that episode. So I like to see if she's there. All right, keep reading. Stay focused. Stay focused, Rachel. Stay focused. My ADHD. My self-diagnosed ADHD. Kelly, I love when you pop in. Yay. I know you're not reading this book along with me, so I know you're just popping in. Be friendly and chat, and I like that. I lost my place. I apologize. Elizabeth soon saw that she was herself closely watched by Miss Bingley, and that she could not speak a word, especially to Miss Darcy, without calling her attention. This observation would not have prevented her from trying to talk to the latter, had they not been seated at an inconvenient distance, but she was not sorry to be spared the necessity of saying much. Her own thoughts were employing her. She expected every moment that some of the gentlemen would enter the room. She feared that the master of the house might be amongst them, and whether she wished or feared it most, she could scarcely determine. After sitting in this manner a quarter of an hour without hearing Miss Bingley's voice, Elizabeth was roused by receiving from her a cold inquiry after the health of her family. She answered with equal indifference and brevity, and the other said no more. So it's kind of being that cold, snippy two women that I have to be polite to you. You're in the same room with me, but we both know that we don't like each other. How is your family? They're fine, thank you. And then just moving on. The next variation which her visit afforded was produced by the entrance of servants with cold meat, cake, and a variety of all the finest fruits in season. But this did not take place till after many a significant look and smile from Miss Ainsley and to Miss Darcy had been given to remind her of her post. There was now employment for the whole party, for though they could not all talk, they could all eat, and the beautiful pyramid of grapes, nectarines, and peaches soon collected them round the table. Oh, I would love nectarines, grapes, and peaches. That sounds really tasty right now. While thus engaged, Elizabeth had a fair opportunity of deciding whether she most feared or wished for the appearance of Mr. Darcy, by the feelings which prevailed on his entering the room. And then, though but a moment before she had believed her wishes to predominate, she began to regret that he came. So she really has mixed feelings about what she thinks about Darcy. Does she want to see him, or is she dreading seeing him? He had been some time with Mr. Gardner, who, with 2 or 3 other gentlemen from the house, was engaged by the river, and had left him only on learning that the ladies of the family intended to visit to Georgiana that morning. So he was fishing with Mr. Gardner, who said, "Oh, Elizabeth and my wife are coming to visit the girls." And he's like, "Oh, I'm out of here. I'm going to the house to visit them too." No sooner did he appear than Elizabeth wisely resolved to be perfectly easy and unembarrassed. She's trying to keep her emotions under control. A resolution the more necessary to be made, but perhaps not the more easily kept, because she saw that the suspicions of the whole party were awakened against them, and that there was scarcely an eye which did not watch his behavior when he first came into the room. In no countenance was attentive curiosity so strongly marked as in Miss Bingley's, in spite of the smiles which overspread her face whenever she spoke to one of its objects of jealousy. I have to stop doing this. Well, Kelly, it's just you and I in here. How are you doing? Yeah, that's so interesting to me. Miss Darcy, on her brother's interest, exerted herself much more to talk, and Elizabeth saw that he was anxious for her sister and herself to get acquainted, and forwarded as much as possible every attempt at conversation on either side. Miss Bingley saw all this likewise, and in the imprudence of anger, took the first opportunity of saying, with sneering civility, "Pray, Miss Eliza, are not the share militia removed from Meryton? They must have been a great loss to your family." Trying to say, showing watching, but it's not for. If you go, I just learned this, you can go up and see the participants. It's just you and I, unless maybe the other people are, they're not signed in. I don't know how that works. But yeah, somebody yesterday taught me about that. And I love that because my daughter likes to stalk me. And this way I can check and see if she's watching and I can give her a hard time. Because that's what mothers do. They give their kids hard times. Somebody's moving their trash can in. It's not thunder. Do y'all hear that? It's the little dots up by the live chat. You click on it, you can pop out the chat, you can see the participants, and I can toggle time. I don't know what the toggle thing said. Toggle time. Oh, you can put the timestamp on when everybody wrote. Interesting. I don't know why I want to do that, but yeah, then it doesn't have the timestamps. Well, that's interesting. And then I can see the participants. Fareed is back. So he, Fareed, Kelly. So he's here. I don't know why it shows 4. Maybe I'm one of the people. I don't know. That would still only be 3. You can't do that? Oh, you can't see the timestamps. Oh, I didn't know that, Fareed. Interesting. I wonder how that other person knew it. They must have a channel where they can, because I didn't know that. I'm not very good with all this technology. I just try and stumble along, and when people give me hints, then I learn new things. Like today, I found out that on Outlook, you always, like I'm not working today, so I always leave an out of the office message. And it says, do you want to send it to your internal and your external contacts both? And I always say yes. And I correct the internal message that says, I'll be back on Monday. Well, apparently you have to change it in both, the message in both, because I was leaving the message that I'll be back on Labor Day. And so one of my colleagues that I work with wrote that, do you know your message says you're not going to be back in until Labor Day? I was like, oh gosh. So I never know these tricks of how to use technology until I screw it up, right? We can see time listeners post comments. Oh yeah, I can see the posting of the comments. That's kind of hard to find too. I had to teach my dad how to do that. So This Miss Bingley just gets on my nerves. She's so rude. In Mr. Darcy's presence, she dared not mention Wickham's name, but Elizabeth instantly comprehended that he was uppermost in her thoughts, and the various recollections connected with him gave her a moment's distress. But exerting herself vigorously to repel the ill-natured attack, she presently answered the question in a tolerably disengaged tone. While she spoke, an involuntary glance showed her Darcy with a heightened complexion earnestly looking at her, and his sister, overcome with confusion and unable to lift up her eyes. Had Miss Bingley known what pain she was then giving her beloved friend, she undoubtedly would have refrained from the hint. But she had merely intended to discompose Elizabeth by bringing forward the idea of a man to whom she believed her partial, to make her betray a sensibility which might injure her in Darcy's opinion, and perhaps to remind the latter of all the follies and absurdities by which some part of her family were connected with that core. So Miss Bingley's just trying to be, a witch. I got you, Fareed. Y'all are always helpful. To make her, not a syllable had ever reached her of Miss Darcy's meditated, thought about elopement. To no creature has it been revealed where secrecy was possible, except to Elizabeth, and from all Bingley's connections, her brother was particularly anxious to conceal it, from that very wish which Elizabeth had long ago attributed to him, of their becoming hereafter her own. He had certainly formed such a plan, and without meaning that it should affect his endeavor to separate him from Miss Bennet, it is probable that it might add something to his lively concern for the welfare of his friend. Elizabeth's collected behavior, however, soon quieted his emotion, and as Miss Bingley, vexed and disappointed, dared not approach nearer to Wickham, Georgiana also recovered in time, though not enough to be able to speak any more. Her brother, whose eyes she feared to meet, scarcely recollected her interest in the affair, and the very circumstance which had been designed to turn his thoughts from Elizabeth seemed to have them fixed on her more and more cheerfully. Funnymakers, how do I forget that name? And how's your survey going on Electoral College? Caper here, Funnymakers, you should ask that question again. She's very wise about politics, and we'll have some interesting response, I'm sure. The question yesterday, Kelly, was, should we continue with the Electoral College? Is it still useful, or should we get rid of it? So I said that's a huge question. I could talk for an enormous amount of time about that. Trying to find my place here, not a dramatic pause. Their visit did not continue long after the question and answer above mentioned, and while Mr. Darcy was attending them to their carriage, Miss Bingley was venting her feelings in criticisms on Elizabeth's person, behavior, and dress. So she's gone after her catty ways. But Georgiana would not join her. Her brother's recommendation was enough to ensure her favor. His judgment could not err, and he had spoken in such terms of Elizabeth as to leave Georgiana without the power of finding her otherwise than lovely and amiable. When Darcy returned to the saloon, Miss Bingley could not help but repeating to him some part of what she'd been saying to his sister. "How very ill Eliza Bennet looks this morning, Mr. Darcy," she cried. "I never in my life saw anyone so much altered as she is since the winter. She's grown so brown and coarse. Remember back then bronze skin was not admired. You wanted to be very pale and fair-skinned." I don't know why that was considered attractive. It looks meager to me, but she's insulting her because she goes out and walks and is healthy and gets color in her skin. Louisa and I were agreeing that we should not have known her again, like we wouldn't have recognized her. However, little Mr. Darcy might have liked such an address. He contented himself with coolly replying that he perceived no other alteration than her being rather tanned, no miraculous consequence of traveling in the summer. "For my own part," she rejoined, "I must confess that I never could see any beauty in her. Her face is too thin, her complexion has no brilliancy, and her features are not at all handsome. Her nose lacks character, there is nothing marked in its lines. Her teeth are tolerable, but not out of the common way. And as for her eyes, which have sometimes been called so fine, I never could perceive anything extraordinary in them. They have a sharp, shrewish look, which I do not like at all. And in her air altogether, there is a self-sufficiency without fashion, which is intolerable. So that's direct characterization. And let's look at the drawing. Do we think that describes her? A thin face, yes. A basic face is what she's described to me, and a normal face. And I think it's been captured well. So even with it being supposed to be insulting, we get this direct characterization of her physical characteristics. You're right, Kelly. Paleness showed that you had the money to be able to be indoors and taken care of, which was a characteristic that was thought highly of. Rich people, wealthy rich people. I'm sorry if you're rich. I don't mean to insult. It's a general statement. Tend to always think they're superior in every way to everyone else. And they belittle people that work hard for a living, that look different than they do, that have a normal look to their face. And it's one of the reasons money hasn't been my motivator in life, because I've worked with wealthy people most of my life, and rarely do you find extremely wealthy people who are also extremely compassionate people. I have met some really generous, wealthy people that truly cared about their community and others and used their money for good. But there's something about once you start getting money, you just want more money. And so I think that's a good observation, Kelly, that it showed you didn't have to work outdoors. And the implication is that was beneath them. Hard work is something I admire, although I'm kind of lazy. I think that's my understanding for Reed, that Oprah really gives generously, although she still has plenty of money. Persuaded, as Miss Bingley was, that Mr. Darcy admired Elizabeth, this was not the best method of recommending herself. But angry people are not always wise. Good line. Angry people are not always wise. Remember that when you're out there dealing with one of these mean girls or mean guys. And in seeing him at last look somewhat nettled, bothered, she had all the success she expected. He was resolutely silent, however, and from a determination of making him speak, she continued, I remember when we first knew her in Hertfordshire, how amazed we all were to find that she was a reputed beauty. And I particularly recollect your saying one night after they'd been dining at Netherfield, she, a beauty? I should as soon call her her mother a wit. But afterwards she seemed to improve on you, and I believe you thought her rather pretty at one time. Yes, replied Darcy, who could contain himself no longer, but that was only when I first knew her, for it is many months since I've considered her as one of the handsomest women of my acquaintance. So he slammed her. You're right, I did say that, but now I think she's the most attractive woman I've ever seen. Eli, good to see you. A lesson before dying. Yeah, it's not the ending you hope for. I always want those happy endings, but it was a beautifully rich human ending. And you saw I could barely get through. The boys in the class just give me, they are so patient with me because they know I'm a soft touch, but it chokes you up, the ending of that story. Jia Patel, hi, how are you? I hope I pronounced your name correctly. I'm sorry. You can write it phonetically for me if I didn't. Could be Jaya, long I. Great Gatsby. I'm glad they're saying, interesting. I was looking through my, let me finish reading this one paragraph and then I'll chat with y'all. He then went away, and Miss Bingley was left to all the satisfaction of having forced him to say what gave no one any pain but herself. Mrs. Gardiner and Elizabeth talked of all that had occurred during their visit as they returned, except what had particularly interested them both. The looks and behavior of everybody they had seen were discussed, except of the person who mostly engaged their attention. They talked of his sister, his friends, his house, his fruit, of everything but himself. Yet Elizabeth was longing to know what Mrs. Gardiner thought of him, and Mrs. Gardiner would have been highly gratified by her niece's beginning the subject. They both want to have the conversation, but neither wants to open the conversation. I was about to say, I was looking at the number of views each of the books have gotten. My top two big reads are Their Eyes Were Watching God, which I understand is a tough read. The dialect is hard. And The Crucible, which surprises me every time I see it as a widely read. And things like Gatsby and a gathering of men, a gathering of old, no, a gathering of old men. Yeah, which was my first. And my short stories are not well watched, so I look to see like the algorithms. Um, and when you Google it, there's just so many other books that come. I mean, not Google it, but when you search it in YouTube, so many other books come up for like To Kill a Mockingbird. So I think unless you find me first and then you find my playlist, you're not going to find the books that I have that are less read. Um, but you didn't know that was the point, Eli. So I would like to find a way to promote them more so people can find them. Um, Priya, thank you so much. That's so sweet of you. I'm going to keep doing them because they do as much good for me as they seem to do for others. Makes me really happy to read this way. It makes me happy to have this community that I share with. Eli, have you joined us over at Discord? I will try and put the link here before I go so that you guys can join us. I don't think Siddharth is there anymore, so he could have put it for me if that were the case. But I will put it in quickly if you guys are patient with me. YouTube. Let me go to my channel. Oh, my neighbor's car is so loud. There's my live read. Let me pause it so you don't get feedback. Now it's posted there. It'll take a minute to show up. And I think that has a time limit on it. But if it does, you can just text me at Best Tutor Friend Instagram, and I'll resend. There it is. So you can click on that link. It's an invitation to join the channel. And I usually let the group know that I'm about to do a live read. We talk about other things. I tell you my boring life, crazy things I'm doing. Speaking of today, I'll do some more Christmas wrapping, some more Christmas shopping. Sarah Ramos, I feel like you should be a resource for students. The problem, Sarah, is I don't have copyright rights to do this. And so schools have to be careful about that. I really should get permissions. I'm just scared if I ask and they say no. And then I hate that I would lose this channel. But I really don't think it's an audiobook and I really think it's a teaching tool. I always encourage everybody to buy the book or to get it from the library. I talk about annotating in the book. I stop and give my own opinions about the book. So hopefully we won't get in trouble. But I think I do hear from a lot of teachers, Sarah. They get in touch with me and ask, not a lot, but a handful of teachers, especially now where everybody's having to learn how to adapt to online teaching. The problem is my teaching method was not always recognized by my administrators. They think you guys should be reading for yourselves. And my point is this generation doesn't have strong reading fluency skills, and this builds reading fluency and reading comprehension. So I'm wanting to do some kind of professional development that helps people understand some different ways of teaching reading and reading at this level. Mo Master, hi, I like your flower. That's very beautiful. It matches my earrings today. Sarah, thanks for that comment. I'm going to keep doing what I believe in, and that's the beauty of internet. If people are interested, they come to it, and if they're not interested, they stop coming to it. So that is what I'll keep doing. Okay, guys, I appreciate you being here. If you see my little face in the bottom corner, go ahead and click it. And hey, Kayla Clark, go ahead and click it and subscribe if you haven't already. Or, Sarah, as you're talking about, let your teachers know, share the resource with them. Some teachers don't like it. They really absolutely believe you should be reading on your own. But I'm a practical teacher and I worked in special ed, and a lot of kids just went to SparkNotes or Schmoop or one of those to get around the reading. And this, I feel like even if you're listening, you're reading, you're hearing the whole story. And I really do encourage you to read along and annotate as we go. So to me, that's the compromise of what realistically teenagers are doing and what teachers are wanting students to do. It was the compromise that I found to help kids. And I can't tell you how many of my own students and students from here on the internet have come and told me I actually finished a book. I never read a book before. I never liked to read. So it's a philosophy of teaching that I believe in, and I'm going to stick with it until I find a different one. Um, Beautiful day. In fact, I'm a little warm in my sweater, but I'm sleeveless, so I'm going to keep it on. And I know that let me double check. My daughter's not here, so my granddaughter's not peeking. Yeah, we built my granddaughter's Christmas present. Can you see it out there? She is so active. She climbs constantly. So it's got a little climbing wall. It's got a slide. It's a pirate ship. It's got a telescope, and it's got a steering wheel on the back. And I can't wait for Christmas when she comes. That means she can't come visit my house until Christmas. But I'm so excited about her playing on it. I think I only have one, Eli, a little granddaughter. And if you want to see her, she's so beautiful. I shouldn't probably post her, but she's on my Instagram a lot of times. Um, she is just a delight. And I'm so thankful that she's my granddaughter. Let's see. Bye, Jaya. Have a great day. So see, that's great. Thank you for that advertisement. She found out it from a friend. So you guys share it with a friend if it's been helpful to you. Mo Master, thank you. I'm glad that you like the talk. The little playhouse is so cute. If I were a kid, I would love that playhouse. Um, it was really hard to put together. So yes, I will. I'll see her through between now and Christmas, but she's coming here Christmas Day. They live 5 minutes away from me, so I get to see her all the time. Um, Ollie, hello. Well, that's what I was thinking, Farida. But it rained the other day, and I need to keep it turned over for right now. But in the summer in Louisiana, that was my thinking. I actually wanted to put it under the fort and make it like a sandbox, but it didn't fit. So I was disappointed in that. I might get a bigger one. Q Lane, how's it going? It's going great. I'm feeling great. About to head out. You missed the reading. I don't know if you're reading Pride and Prejudice with us. I've posted, if you look back in the chat, I've posted our Discord link. We're over 40 members so far. It's just a bunch of people who love reading and love school. I call us nerds. I hope that's not offensive, but I was a nerd in high school. I figure if you're reading, or maybe you're trying to get around reading, maybe you're not a nerd, you're the opposite, but it's a bunch of us that like to talk about different foreign language, different culture, share ideas, chat with each other, support each other, encourage each other through SAT and ACT, give each other hints and helpful information. Looking for Kite Runner. Ollie, I'm so glad. That was a good book, wasn't it? Not my favorite, but a really good one. And invariably, I cry. I don't think I'm going to cry in Pride and Prejudice, but I cry. Khaled Hosseini's books, I always cry. There's not one of them I haven't cried in when I'm reading. Get working on your essay. Good for you, Eli. I don't want you to be behind the finals week. That's a good plan. You guys have a great weekend too. Q-Lang, did you find the Discord link? Because if you didn't, I can post it again. Fareed, that is my biggest fear, that when other grandchildren come, I'm going to be prejudiced about my oldest son. My mother used to say all the time, she'd call him James David, firstborn love of my life. And, we've carried that always, firstborn love of my life. And I'm sure, I have 5 kids and I love those 5 enormously. I don't love one more than the other. So I'm curious to see what's going to happen when I have other grandchildren. But she's enough for me. She is got such a great imagination that we play constantly together, and it's so much fun. A very, very serious child would be difficult for me because I'm such a goofy, and she loves to be goofy with me. And when I call, or she can call. They're so smart, these little ones with these smartphones. She knows how to find me on her mama's phone and call me, and I hear, "Oh, me," and it's just this big, delightful sound, and it makes my day when she calls. So, anyway, I've gone on and on about my little heart there. So you guys enjoy today. I have a lot going on tomorrow. I'm not sure if I'll be able to read, and I'm going to the Renaissance Festival on Saturday, so that'll be fun. My family and I have done that 2 years now. That'll be a really fun day out because it's outdoors. We dress up, we act crazy, and I'm looking forward to that family time. We do things like that for at Christmas time. We try and do events together. All right. I really appreciate you guys. Thanks so much for sharing your time with me. And anytime people tell me, "Oh, teenagers, this what's happening with the future," I'm like, "You don't know. Teenagers are the best. They're so full of information. They're so curious. They're so honest, and really, they're generally so kind. When you give them the respect that they're entitled to, they're so kind in return." So I appreciate you guys. And if you're not a teenager, welcome to the gang. We'll just all pretend we are. So you guys have a great day. Don't forget to subscribe, ring the bell so you know when I go live. And we'll talk before I even go to that festival. We'll talk over on Discord. You guys have a great day. And thanks for all the thumbs up. Don't forget to keep reading, and I will read to you next time. See ya.